Also, although it may not be so convenient or French, anyone can easily make good yogurt at home. Trade boomed on cheap oil. Times have changed, but habits die hard. Variety may be the spice of life, but when life's at a premium, can we afford quite so much variety?
Now, many of these examples can be given. The fact that those that I have given are very humble only mean that even in these humble instances, it can be seen how immensely costly in terms of energy, effort, organization, transport, our system of production has become, and that the way out of it is much more a reunification of the point of production and the point of consumption. And then we shall be rid of a great deal of this transport, which is now shaking our villages and towns to bits, filling the air with noise.
Now that cheap fuel, the key to prosperity in many big industries, is gone, what will happen? The brick industry is typical in the economies of size. At one extreme, this is the way bricks are made by hand. It demands strength and a lot of skill. It looks easy, but takes months to learn to fling clay to fit the brick mold precisely. The energy cost is human effort, making such bricks 4 times as expensive as mass-produced ones. But they look so good, there's a big demand. The bricks are then dried. The inevitable energy price of firing and transporting them is minimal compared with the labor cost of making them by hand. To get round that, the process was mechanized. Where both coal and clay are present is the ideal site for a brickworks. This one, near Mansfield, using its own small quarry, supplies the local neighborhood with 20,000 bricks a day. By industrial standards, although tiny, it's self-contained and pays its way. Where technology is appropriate, it's used. Because it's small, men double up on many jobs, making work varied and interesting. Every day, 60 tons of clay are milled and mixed with water to produce a continuous bar of clay, which is cut into bricks by a battery of sharp wires. To take the sweat out of stacking the bricks has so far proved too expensive in capital and energy for a brickworks this size, although it's paid to mechanize the time-consuming business of shaping the bricks. However, as energy becomes increasingly expensive, human labor may, like centuries ago, become the economic way out. What's needed is more appropriate modern technology to ease the workload, but not consume excess fuel. Schumacher doesn't advocate drudgery. He wants technology to make skills and tasks like stacking this kiln easier without simply substituting men with power-hungry machines. While dried bricks are placed for baking, the already fired ones can be removed. Kilns are fired in rotation, some warming up, some firing, some cooling down. This old-fashioned but efficient device provides the kiln that's being fired with a constant supply of coal. It looks primitive, but works well, and illustrates an advantage of small industrial units. 18 months ago, they scrapped this coal-feeding system and went over to gas. Since then, their propane supply quadrupled in price. They stopped using it, reinstalled their old equipment, and went back to coal. Only in a small works is such flexibility possible. Brick making is fuel-intensive. They burn 4 tons of coal a day to fire the bricks. But once fired, there's another energy consumer, transport, and on this, the smaller unit now pays off. The bricks are stored near the kiln. To get them to building sites nearby only involves 4 lorry trips a day, each less than 20 miles. That's only one way small units score over their bigger brothers. This brickworks uses 4 times more clay than the first, making 10 times more bricks, but with only 3 times the labor force. Almost everything is automated. It's a superb example of modern time engineering. Every brick remains untouched by human hand. From the worker's point of view, there's much less sweated labor. In fact, if everything's going well, there's almost nothing to do at all, except watch the bricks go by. Forklifting bricks to the kiln is almost the only non-automated job. But the fired bricks travel twice as far to the building sites, their lorries doing over 3,000 miles a day. 5 years ago, 10 bricks from that kind of highly mechanized works arrived on the site costing only 6 pence. They could undercut bricks from the small unit we saw previously, as these cost 9.5 pence. The 2 major expenses of a small unit were 3 pence for coal and 6 for labor. The mechanized unit paid only 2 pence for labor, 2.5 pence for oil, and a penny for electricity, a total, including extras, of 6 pence. But now oil has quadrupled in price to more than 10 pence. Labor costs have only risen to 3.5 pence, but all in all, the end price has nearly trebled. In contrast, the labor-intensive small unit bricks have become increasingly competitive. Their coal price has doubled to 6 pence, but as their labor costs have only gone up by just over a half, say 4 pence, their 10 bricks now cost just a halfpenny more than those of the big unit. If fuel prices keep rising, and there doesn't seem much hope that they won't, costs may force a reversal of our previous trend towards more mechanization. It could mean an end to every unemployment problem. The country is dotted with similar medium or small-sized brickworks, except for one area where are concentrated the biggest brickworks in the world. Brickworks like this produce over 2 million bricks a day. That's 100 times as many bricks and 100 times as much clay as the small brickworks we first saw. The reason for this concentration is that flattened clay is carbonaceous. That means it's full of combustible material to help fire it. Each day, this clay itself supplies the equivalent of 300 tons of coal, so they only need to buy 50 tons to keep the bricks burning. From both the energy conservation and profitability point of view, it makes very good sense. But there's a price to be paid, not by the company, but by the whole environment. 6,000 tons of clay each day make a big hole in the ground. The company defends such holes as potentially invaluable for dumping London's waste, or when cleaned up as a water sports facility. However, until and if they can eliminate the stench that often creates a grey haze over much of Bedfordshire, the beauty of their water wonderland may not be fully appreciated. And there's another snag. Flattened bricks go from John O'Groats to Land's End, with each trip averaging over 100 miles and hundreds of lorries making them. Every day, each fleet of lorries burns up 5 times as much oil as the total fuel and power used in making the bricks. Even then, By transporting bricks over 60,000 miles a day, they often arrive, at the moment, cheaper than locally made ones. To avoid filling our roads with lorries, the company has developed a sophisticated system to send them by rail. So far, the train only goes to a few locations, and once there, the bricks continue by lorry. What's important is that at the end of their journey, Fletton bricks regularly undercut the price of all other bricks. But will small brickworks go on being put out of business now that transport has become such a major factor in profit or loss? As Schumacher points out, cash profits in many similar big industries often conceal gross energy losses. Each method of mass-producing bricks involves its own particular snag. But is there no other way? We put the problem of devising a viable alternative for not just the biggest, but for all three brickworks we've seen, to one of Schumacher's team, a consultant to the brick industry. We had a model made to show some of the novel features of his prototype, all of which he insists are practical with even today's technology. John Parry.
This brickworks is tiny by modern standards, but it contains all the normal features of a brick-making plant, but one or two quite extraordinary ones as well.
The significance of this brickworks is its flexibility with energy resources.
The extraordinary feature about this kiln is that it does not use coal, oil or propane. It is operated by 3 renewable fuels. Here in the corner of the quarry is a small sewage plant which takes the effluent from the local community. This sewage is converted into methane, and the methane provides the main source of fuel for the kiln. It also provides generating power for producing electricity to power these industrial trucks, locomotives, direct drive for the quarry machinery, and also drive for the brick-making machinery here. The second potential fuel that can be used in this brickworks is biomass. This, in plain English, is a fuel crop, a firewood crop grown specially for the purpose of firing the kiln.
The third source of energy is free, wind power to mill the clay. To overcome the snag of being dependent on the climate for power, Parry incorporated other refinements.
Now, the windmill, of course, doesn't operate all the time. The wind doesn't blow every day of the year at every hour of the day. So it's necessary to have an input store, plenty of clay, waiting for to be milled, and also an output store prior to the extrusion process. In its local environment, this brickworks will not provide a huge eyesore, vast quarry areas, forests of chimneys. There'll in fact only be one chimney, and the small amount of smoke that's produced from this stack will quickly disperse and in no way inconvenience the local people. In the same way, this factory is so small that one vehicle will be able to take the entire output.
An additional source of fuel could be local refuse. Inflammable waste would help fire the clay, and the rest dumped to refill and reclaim the quarry. The precise dimensions and details of the plan haven't been finalized, but it can't be dismissed as a utopian dream, for it's based on technology, all of which is available today. The idea of hiding the kiln at the bottom of its quarry has already been used by London Brick. But it's not just on aesthetic or even energy grounds that the plan appeals. Just as in making bricks by hand, the work would involve a lot of skill. It would probably be almost as hard, but give greater variety, and unlike production lines, reduce the chance of getting bored with repetitive monotony. Workers could see the whole operation through, from felling timber and excavating clay to driving the battery-powered trucks and stacking the kiln. Some, however, say such ideas may be fine for the third world, but life's easier watching a machine doing a job rather than doing it yourself with a lot of other men.
I was told by an industrialist not so long ago, not in this country, overseas, who had a highly automated factory, in a region where there was a lot of unemployment, that surely his job, in order to produce a high-quality product, was to eliminate the human factor. Because people make mistakes, people are unreliable, people can even go on strike, whereas machines, when they are properly set, they don't make mistakes, they're reliable, they don't go on strike. Well, that is one type of logic. The question is, what becomes of the human factor if it's been eliminated? It's still needed, but only for very menial tasks, not for any creative task. And the recipe for the future, I'm quite certain, is to try and bring the real human factor back into the productive process. Hitherto, it has been easy to eliminate it because it's been substituted for by very power-hungry machines. Now, if the power base becomes questionable, these machines become also questionable, if only for the resources argument, but also ecologically machines are mindless and they cause pollution. The human factor is gentle. Some farmer told me that it was a big problem how to explain that some small farms were getting such higher yields per acre than the big farms. And he'd come to the conclusion it's the TLC factor, the tender loving care. Now, if people can practice this, can practice their ingenuity, then they're happier people, then they don't need so many resources, and with the help of modern technology, we can make them into very productive people.
Schumacher says the words sewing machine are a misnomer. It should be called a sewing tool. For while it helps its operator, it doesn't take over the whole job and reduce skill to mere machine minding. The skill shown here took time to perfect. It's still needed for making top-quality, long-lasting shirts. Today, though, there's less call for such craftsmanship. Industry goes for the bigger profits of quantity output. That means mechanization, and often at the expense of quality. Even if the collar here being stitched outwears a mass-produced one, few people are prepared to pay that bit extra for it. The market is more for fashion than durability, and novelty is often the major selling point. This machine isn't much bigger, yet sews collars faster than any human. But it can only sew collars, although it costs many times the price. It's a mesmerizing example of superb engineering, churning out collars at such a rate that it's a demanding task just watching it, feeding it with cloth, and awaiting the 1 in a million chance that it goes wrong. But for its operator, it's hardly a very creative or rewarding job. However, as she herself said, it passes the time. Today, like staring at clocks, millions of people get little more from work than a way of passing the time. Switch on the machines and let them get on with it while we enjoy the new age of leisure. That was the almost universal hope not so long ago. It hasn't worked out quite like that. Schumacher agrees that massive technology has vastly improved our material standard of life, but at a price. And not just the obvious price of non-renewable resources. Perhaps there might be fewer strikes and less industrial unrest if the jobs we do all week were more satisfying. Most strikes are for more money. Money not just for survival, but to compensate for a drab working week and to keep up with inflation. And after all, inflation is itself another product of growth economics.
If we get rid of the idea, the bigger the better, which may well have been a 19th century truth, but now has become a 20th century myth, in my opinion. If we get off this idea and give the benefit of the doubt to work in the other direction, if we start systematically from the actual human requirements and longings and try to adapt our technology to these requirements and longings, instead of asking people all the time to adapt themselves to the machines, then I think everything is possible. Now, what do I mean? One of the deep longings of human nature is to work creatively, not just with the brain, but with brain and hands. To make something, to take pride in what he is making. This has been virtually wiped out by this high-power modern development. If the high power disappears or is no longer so plentiful, then perhaps this longing has a better chance, provided it is backed up with real intelligence, intelligent technology and so on. In other words, the beauty and desirability of creative work can be restored.